I was out here, pregnant, with my first baby, and I was sleeping. Everything was, well, I was mostly sleeping, and I sat, well, I didn't really sit bolt up in bed, but I did as best I could to being pregnant out to here. And I realized that I had no idea how I was going to keep this baby from being a serial killer. I had a stack of books that I'd read and annotated and marked up, and my husband and I had purchased about $6.7 million in gear, but I had no clue. So a light bulb went off over my head, and I called the person I knew who had kids who actually were really awesome. So I called my brother, and I said, hello. And my brother said, hello? And I said, Sean, it's 1:30 in the morning. I have an emergency. You need to help me. And he said, what? Shouldn't you call 911? And I said, no, it's not that type of emergency. I just need to know how your kids are so good, why you have such great kids. And he said, it's 3:30 in the morning. And I said, no, it's 1:30. And he said, we're in different time zones. It's 3:30 in the morning. And I said, well, answer my question, I'll let you go. So he coughed a little bit and probably rolled over and then said the next 5 very simple words: teach her to be kind. And then he hung up, and I had to email him the next day and thank him at that point. But those 5 words really resonated with me because I thought, super, I'm a teacher, which I'll tell you about in just a second. But I'm a teacher. I'm kind all the time. My child will not be a serial killer. Woo-hoo. So I got up the next morning and I thought, I'm going to really test this. Now, at the time, I was teaching high school English in the U.S. I have a penchant for moving around, so I've been able to teach actually all the grades from kindergarten through to the end of high school. In fact, in both English and in French, because of all this moving around to France and the US, and now most recently to Canada. And so I thought, perfect, I'm totally going to do this kind thing and see if I can, keep some of my grade 9 students from being serial killers too. So the next day, we were doing The Great Gatsby, and they were supposed to have read chapter 4. I said, perfect. We'll do our 10-point quiz, then we'll talk about colors and symbolism, all the stuff that teachers like to get really excited about. And as they're doing their quiz, I'm looking around the room and I'm thinking, I am a master, well, it would have been like this, I'm a master of kindness. Look at these kids. And then I realized that actually before I even got that quiz back, I knew exactly which kids were going to get 10s, who didn't even bother reading and was just kind of filling in the Scantron, making a picture, and which kids were struggling with it and which kids weren't, and the whole thing. And I thought, well, how is that kind? Isn't that just shaming? So I did something for the first time, and not the last time in my career. I thought to myself, this isn't right, and I bent over and I waddled around that classroom, and I picked up every test, and I had them put it in the trash. And then I put it down, and I stood in front of the class, and I said, today, we're going to read chapter 4 together. We're going to stop every couple paragraphs, or whenever you feel like something has happened and you don't understand it, or something has happened and you want to make a connection, whatever. This is you reading the story, and I'm just going to hang out and help you. And it absolutely changed the way those kids, the way I think those kids understood The Great Gatsby. And so then, of course, a little while later, I had the term "that's so gay" was really running rampant in the high school I was at. And I had some students come up to me and say, hey, could you run a GSA, which is a gay straight alliance? And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so honored. Thank you for being that safe when you're in my classroom and believing in me. So I was talking to my friend outside of school, and I was excited. And this friend also happened to be gay. And I said, why do people even say that phrase? It's so degrading. I mean, being gay is a choice. It doesn't really matter. You know, I choose to have brown hair and you choose to have a hat on your head. What does it matter? And once again, there I thought I was being kind and nice. My friend looked me in the eyes and said, "Oh, baby, no. It's not a choice. Do you think I would choose to have my parents kick me out when I was 15 because of who I am? Do you think I would choose to be afraid to walk home on a dark road because I might get jumped?" And I sat there stunned, because once again, something I thought was very kind and very inclusive was not what I was doing at all. So I headed over to Glisten, and I came back to school with these great posters that you can see that say, "That's so cheerleader who can't say smart stuff," and "That's so gamer guy who has more video games than friends," and "That's so jock who can complete a pass but not a sentence." And I put them up on my wall, because every time somebody said that, I would stop the class and I would just gesture. And I would say, "Why do you think that's okay?" And that was actual kindness. One more time, I'm sitting in a coffee shop with my stack of essays and kindly devoting so much of my weekend to correcting them and giving them grades, and I get to one that is absolutely riddled by the time I'm finished with it with red pen. And I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, who on earth even is this? I look at the name, and it's this boy who is super bright, super verbal, can tell a joke in 10 different accents. And I think, oh, what a shame. I wonder why he didn't spell check. And as I'm sitting there looking at this, I thought, oh no, this looks familiar. And my gut said, just wait a second, don't worry, the brain will kick in. And my brain said, oh, Elizabeth, this looks like every paper you ever wrote in university for French. And I realized at that point that it wasn't me kindly helping them with their errors when I would write up and make their papers bleed with red pen. And so I crumpled up the paper, threw it in the trash. I went into class the next day and I said, "Listen, kiddo, my dog hit a coffee, it spilled all over your paper. Here's the question I want you to answer. Can you just tell me? I won't make you go back and print it out again." And he went from having what would have been like a negative 600 grade to actually earning an A, because he was able to articulate and tell me what I needed to know. He just couldn't write it. And I thought, what a shame that is, that I wasn't exhibiting kindness to this boy up until that point. And to my other students, regrettably, I'm sorry. Now, when I moved back to Canada, I had the opportunity to move into an elementary system. And like a good elementary teacher, I came in with my bin of amazing treasures. So candies and pencils and stickers and bits and baubles. I think I spent $30 at the dollar store, which, as you know, is a colossal amount of money at the dollar store. And I had kids earning stickers for coming to school on time and tying their shoes and doing nice things for people. And one more time, I'm not being kind. Because I look at that and say, every time I give Joey a sticker for doing what he's already done, because he's a nice kid anyway, he's not learning really how to step up, how to do better. And every time Consuela earns nothing because she's scatterbrained, she can't ever really find two shoes at the same time, she's not changing either. And so I'm doing no act of kindness by giving these extrinsic rewards. And so there I was, once again, realizing that kindness, as much as I like to think I'm doing kind things, is harder than it looks. And so those 5 simple words of my brothers, "Teach her to be kind," are actually a heck of a lot harder than they might seem, even though they didn't come with $5.7 million worth of gear and a stack of books. So then my question became, if kindness is that important that a grown adult can mess it up, if kindness is so important to our kids because we're looking at our kids with anorexia, with bulimia, with obesity, which you think, oh, that's the exact opposite, but they're still filling a void with food that they should be filling with kindness and self-appreciation and self-esteem. We're looking at our kids with rampant learning disorders, like my friend with his essay, who was the most beautiful case of dyslexia I'd ever seen. Why aren't we teaching this? Because it began to be very apparent to me that kindness is more important than math. It's more important than English. It's more important than anything you can think of. Because every time I'd listen to the radio about a problem that was going on in society, be it racism, sexism, whatever ism you'd like, I kept hearing over and over again the experts saying, well, it comes down to the kids. We have to teach the kids to do better, as though we as adults are broken and can't be fixed. But either way, why aren't we teaching this in school? And I think the reason we're not teaching it in school is because we think we are. So this year I had the opportunity to make kindness the center of my teaching. Tests went away. Not to say we didn't have tests, but the impact of tests and standardized testing and make work projects went away. And I looked at my classroom and I said, you know, my son, who I can lay on my stomach reading beside, who is 4, the entire time we're reading will be pivoting around the book. Not because he doesn't know what's going on. He is absolutely attuned and doesn't miss a letter. But he's a kid that needs to move. And so I said to myself, I bet there might be other kids out there like that. And so I bought myself some exercise balls. And I took a bunch of chairs out of the room. And I put the exercise balls in for my bouncers. Because some people need to move to learn, period. And then in the other corner, I set up some music, soft music, classical music or jazz, because some people need to either have music around them to learn or need to have that audio cue so that their brain can half listen to that and then focus really and dig into whatever it is you're learning. And then across the room, I had a bunch of beanbag chairs, and it was very quiet and well lit, but purposefully lit, so that my kids, like my husband, who need to have that silence to really be able to fully immerse themselves in a problem or an idea, had that space too. And the most amazing thing happened. These kids started learning at their own paces. And these kids stopped caring about whether or not Genevieve was at the same reading level as they were. And they stopped worrying, and they stopped being bored, and they stopped having anxiety issues because of that boredom. Because who has time to be bored when you can go at your own pace? We saw a shift in being, where kids were allowed to be who they were. Be who you are. I don't care who it is. We saw a shift in self-regulation, where kids who might normally have been prone to walking and moving and maybe hitting stopped. We saw, again, that anxiety, depression, self-esteem issue lower. And then we made the next step. We started saying, please, thank you, and you're welcome, until it didn't seem weird anymore. Because you know, when you first start it, you're like, thank you. "You're welcome," like you're reading in some foreign language. But we started just saying it to the point where it wasn't weird sounding anymore, and it was authentic. But best was that when we did have issues, because they're still kids, when we had conflict, I taught them the line, "I forgive you." Because when somebody hits you on the head with a baseball, saying it's okay, it's not okay. It hurts. You might even have a bump. It's not okay. But saying to the kiddo, "You know what, it was a mistake, I forgive you," releases you from being consumed by the anger of the incident. You can just go back to saying, "Oh man, that really hurts," and move on. So why aren't we teaching kindness? Because it's really complex. And yet, it comes down to very simple processes. In order for you to teach kindness, and I don't care if you're 94 or 14 or anything in between, teaching kindness begins when you stop being unkind to yourself. You have to allow yourself to make mistakes, and you have to stop the dialogue of, "Way to go, Elizabeth, you did it again. You should have listened to your mom." I love you, Mom. Because you'd never say that to somebody else who made a mistake. I would never walk up to anyone and say, "Way to go, you really screwed that one up." So why would I want to listen to it if it's my own voice? Use "I forgive you" instead of "it's okay." And listen with your ears and your eyes. Because I guarantee you, if it's worth listening to as to who you are as a human being, then you're going to want to put down the phone, you're going to want to stop driving, and you're going to want to listen with your ears and eyes. Listen to your gut as well. If your gut says don't do it, don't do it. And always look for the bright, not the night, because I guarantee you, you will find what you're looking for. Thank you.